Genesis, we find that everything had its beginning with God, the Creator. In the beginning, there is only God. But God chooses to bring forth life, all kinds of life. This life comes from God and has its being in God. It belongs to God. This is perhaps the most fundamental teaching of the Bible. Land, nature, people, everything belongs to the Creator. Nothing belongs to itself. Nothing belongs to itself. It all belongs to the Creator. The basis of humanity's spiritual and social well-being is in the acceptance of the fact that Psalm 24 is true. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. There's also another message in the Genesis account. It is the message that human beings are to have dominion over the creation. We're to have control and responsibility over this world. The tragedy is that many have interpreted this to mean that we can do anything we want with the creation because we have been given dominion or control. They forget that there is a very large responsibility element to the promise of Scripture. Our forgetfulness also helps to explain why our dominion over the earth is often of destructive nature and contrary to the loving purposes of God. We're guilty of selective amnesia, which allows us to accept dominion, yet ignores the context which gives our dominion meaning, namely that we were created for the responsibility of being a caretaker of the creation, and that we were created in the image of God. The God who treasures what has been created and celebrates the richness and diversity of this world and in people. The Creator lovingly gives birth to the world and all that is in it, and then hands it over to us and says, take care of it. What a responsibility. The Genesis account also reveals to us the tragedy of the fall, or the fact that sin has entered into our hearts and affected how we respond to God and how we respond to each other. And we've been living with that ever since the beginning. But not only that, it affects how we respond to the creation. As sin creates a self-centeredness within us, we begin to respond to the creation with the idea of how we can profit from it rather than working with it in a cooperative effort. We see nature as out there and that we are here. We fail to see how interconnected we really are. For years, we believed we could exploit nature thoughtlessly in the belief that no great harm could be done to the environment. We're now only beginning to recognize our intimate connection with the air and the water and the soil and everything. Many still foolishly resist this truth. Many feel that the earth will take care of itself, cleanse itself, and they're right, eventually, but it may shake off the fleas that we become to it before it's over. We are all implicated in any action taken by even a single one of us. I know we resist this idea. just as Cain resisted the idea that he was his brother's keeper. But as humans, we belong to a species where one act of compassion has ramifications for everyone on the planet. When you do one good, decent thing, there are waves that come from it. But it's also true that one act of cruelty touches us all as well. Hold up your bulletin. Just hold it up. You don't have to read it now. Just hold it up and kind of look at it in general. If you're a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Use your imagination with me, brothers and sisters. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If we look into the sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. Without sunshine, the forest cannot grow. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. And if we continue to look, we see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we will see the wheat. The logger cannot exist without his daily bread. And therefore, wheat that becomes his bread is also in this sheet of paper. The logger's father and mother are in it too. Now, if I hold up a container of motor oil, that same process begins. We look into it. We see what it helps us with. We also see what we have to deal with and how its impact on our environment. We see that as we look at that can of oil, we're in it. Every one of us. And that means we are participants in what it takes to get it to us. That may be fouling up the air. It may be going to war over it. We may be unwilling participants, but we are still participants. So we are interconnected. The world has grown so much smaller. Everything we do, everything we consume, everything we waste, everything we throw away, everything we buy, all of it sends out waves that affect everyone and everything around us. We can live in denial of this. We can pretend that we make no difference, that our stewardship and responsibilities really have no effect, that what we do or what we fail to do doesn't affect the creation, but the truth is it does. Just when you go to the store all week long, when you come home and you prepare meals or whatever you do, remember all that packaging. Only this time, don't throw it in the garbage can. Just put it in a big bag and just see how long it takes to fill that bag up. See how long it takes and how many bags it will take to fill it in a week's time or a month's time. And then we begin to see the magnification. We know we struggle with how then do we be good stewards in a complex world with complex situations. It's not easy, I know that. But there are three reasons we are to be good stewards of the creation. First, the creation itself bears witness to the Creator. The Psalms and the prophets declare that the trees clap their hands and that the mountains sing to the Creator. Even Jesus says that the rocks would cry out as a witness if his followers didn't. There's a central idea that the natural world around us is part of the celebration of God. And most of us know that this is true. I mean, how many times have we watched the beauty of nature? Maybe it was a sunrise. Maybe it was the sky at night. How many times have we watched that beauty and said to ourselves, how can anyone say there is no God? The world around us bears witness to the reality and beauty of our God. But the more we disfigure it, the world around us, the more we pave it over and leave less and less room for its display, the more we silence nature's witness to the Creator. What a tragedy that in some cities you can travel for miles and hardly ever see anything natural. It's all man-made, crying out how important we are and giving us the false idea that we are the creators and sustainers of our lives. But in any city, if you look hard enough and close enough, you will notice that despite all those tons of concrete and asphalt, there on the sidewalk, in some little crack, a little small green shoot comes forth, still shouting out the glory and wonder of the one true Creator. Nature cries out to tell us of who God is and God's love for us. The second thing that we learn about the issue of stewardship is the second reason we are to be good stewards of the creation is for the sake of the poor. As the environmental disasters are increasing, the capacity of the earth to produce food is diminishing at an astounding rate. How many fish have to have mercury poisoning before we admit we have a problem? How much soil must be washed away into our rivers and oceans? How many species of animals must die out? The environmental disaster is a problem that affects the poor more than the rich. It's not the rich who are going to suffer, though eventually we will. We who have money are going to be able to buy food. But as the capacity of the planet to produce food gets less and less, the poor will be the first to be cut off. And if we don't become good stewards of the environment, the poverty which comes will bring about wars on a frightening scale. You ain't seen nothing yet. We're already beginning to see it. And when you see the deserts growing on the continent of Africa, it's frightening. More and more people are being born with less and less food, and those conditions will bring about tribal warfare. Years may bring about a holocaust of tribal wars as various groups of people try to gain control over limited resources available, and even in our country out west, you can already hear the stories of the competition for water rights. In this country, it is the poor who are often the first to feel the consequences of not being able to afford to move away from a toxic dump site, or who have to breathe the air of a factory next door that manages to skirt any kind of serious clean air requirements. They don't build waste dumps and put them into downs and roads. They put them in the communities of the least powerful. And third, the third reason that we are to be good stewards of the creation is that it is a gift to be received with admiration and gratitude. Nature is not a property to be possessed, but rather it is a gift meant to bless us and to bless those who come after us. The plants and animals with whom we live teach us about birth and growth and maturing and death. They teach us about the need for gentle care and especially about the importance of patience and hope. And one of the sad features of our day is that we no longer believe in the ministry of nature to us. We often limit ministry to work for people, by people. But if we allow nature, it will minister to some of our deepest needs. To go to Camp Bethel, or to go to the woods, or to go to the ocean, can give us a chance to quiet our hearts. The creation is part of God's means of healing and refreshing us, helping us to regain our rhythm and our perspective. Even our pets teach us something about God's care. Brothers and sisters, you and I don't own land. We may have a legal deed to it, but it is God's. We just happen to live here. And while we live here, we are called to be good stewards and to build up this gift of creation rather than to destroy it. It's not that we should never cut down a tree or never take oil from the ground. It is the truth that we must never forget that the creation is a gift of grace. It is not something we own. We are stewards. We are caretakers. It's not a right of possession. It is God's. We must never forget that whatever we do here has implications for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and their children and so on and so on. The way we are treating this gift of the creation is going to shape their future. We cannot simply live for ourselves in the moment. So what do we do in our frustration? I can say that a lot of good things. One thing is we need to become more aware. We need to find out what we can recycle. We have a tremendous amount of waste in our country and in other places in the world, and we're hearing stories about islands of plastic floating in the ocean that are as big as some states. We can use less, buy less. Find out how to do that. Think it through. Begin the process in your own life, on your scale, to do what you can do. We can pay attention to how our representatives are voting on issues that affect the environment. You know, this is a democracy. And democracy only works if people pay attention and vote. But most of all, becoming aware of our own lives and how our lives are affecting nature, and how we can be a part again of God's good stewardship. The Bible tells us over and over that the Creator wants to change our condition and restore us to the way it was in the beginning. That's a repeated theme through the Bible. The Apostle Paul tells us that the rest of the creation groans and labors in anticipation, as in childbirth. God is determined to give birth to something special. And God's people are never to give up and presume that there is no hope, even when they feel outnumbered, even when they feel they're powerless. For our God is all powerful. The creation longs for the day when we humans will repent, accept the Creator's forgiveness offered through Jesus Christ, and come once again under the authority of the Creator. The creation's healing is tied to our own healing as well. Only in this way can we experience what the Hebrews call shalom, a peace of unity and wholeness with God, with each other, and with the rest of the creation. It is all God's. We are only temporary caretakers, called to be faithful during our change. Become aware, listen to the Spirit, and be guided by God's call to love one another and love God's creation.